welcome to Turn the Page, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
Hi, welcome to Syosset Library's Turn the Page podcast. I am one of your hosts, Jessica, and I'm here with
Jen. Hello, welcome.
And we are really happy to welcome back. Can we call you a friend of the show? Because this is your third time chatting.
Oh, you can. I am a friend. I am a fan. I am here. That's right. Chuck Tingle.
And we are fans too. So this is the third time we are interviewing you, Chuck, and this book is Lucky Day, which, you know, every time I've been telling people, I'm like, oh, I'm interviewing Chuck Tingle again, and they're like, well, what's this book about? What's it about? Because I put all of your books in everybody's hands, and I'm like, must read. And the only way I could describe this is bisexuality breaks the world.
Yeah, that's a good one. You know, what's funny is now that you write these books and then you're tasked with promoting them. So I have had to kind of think about what is the summary of this book. And I'm generally pretty good at that. But this one, it tackles a lot of things. It's also pretty like dang existential and broad. I feel like what I have come to realize is there's about 4 or 5 things that you could say this book is about, and all would be correct. So I think your take is actually a good one. That's kind of the take that I fall back on, but there's like a lot of different layers to it. But let's go with that.
Yeah, I mean, again, because I think with Camp Damascus, I'm like, it's this, but it's also this. And with Bury Your Gaze, I'm like, it is about a lot of things, but this one in particular, I'm like, yeah, this woman comes out as bi to her mom, and everything just falls apart. And there is so much more to it than that. But what a setup for a book.
Yes. No, it does. I am dealing in horror, so obviously fear is a factor, and you do want to scare the audience. But I have just realized the bisexuals afraid of coming out. I hope that they don't read too much into this, because I promise in real life it will likely not have the same cascading events as in this book. Fingers crossed. You never know.
Yes.
I guess the point of the book is that anything's possible. But I would say incredibly unlikely that your life will resemble this book.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say.
Yes, of course.
I would love to ask a question about Vera and shaping her as a character. She is a statistics and probability professor. I'm curious if you had a personal interest in statistics and probability that shaped this character.
You know what? So obviously autism is a spectrum, but my particular place on it, and I think a very common one, is a sort of search for order. It's like seeing all of these little, just little pieces. I tend to look at like autism for me is instead of like registering the whole, I am constantly seeing every little piece of something. And so that's kind of like the journey, right? And so I think a special interest in the statistics of things kind of comes with that. So I relate to it in that way. I mean, off the top of it too, there are some statistics about flying, about plane crashes and stuff. And that I am terrified of flying. I have to do it all the time because I do my book tours, and I spend a lot of my dang life in airports, and I am terrified of flying. So I think part of it was probably related to my journey of, if you look into the statistics of flying, it's very safe and not frightening at all. And then I've tried to conquer my fear by way of statistics, and has not worked out for me. I'm still terrified, but maybe this book was a bit of processing that.
I actually had a very interesting personal kind of intake on it when I started reading it. I was like, oh, this is somebody, this is somebody with OCD, because for me, what Vera was doing very much resembled my brand of OCD. Like when you talk about somebody with OCD, everybody thinks, oh, you're washing your hands and you're super neat. Anybody who has seen my office knows I am not super neat in any, like, really, that is not my brand, but my brand deals in numbers and statistics and seeing patterns that may or may not actually be there, but to me, they're real. So, I was reading this at first and I'm just like, man, this is where my brain was at.
Yes. Yeah, I have heard, and obviously, I am not uh, capable, nor should I be making any sort of diagnosis calls, but it does appear that like autism, ADHD, OCD, there's like a bit of a kinship there almost that I think a lot of buckaroos feel overlapping things. So I'm not surprised by that at all. And it kind of makes sense. Like I know that there is something for some buckaroos trying to find order in the world is really what kind of will help them with their fear. And ultimately it doesn't fix everything, but like it's just like you look for these patterns. And also maybe that's why this book resonated with you so much, because that's kind of the fear that it tackles, right? It's I think anyone who starts thinking about these bigger existential thoughts and starts to try to like quantify the universe, there is a certain fear that comes with that's kind of like the main central horror of the book.
Yeah, I think what resonated for me in my sort of particular neurocognitive architecture was that Vera is a person who has trouble identifying what she's feeling in the moment and kind of can turn that into overthinking. And, something happens in this book that sort of, I think, exhibits the limits of how much overthinking can help you, and that sort of spurs this like existential crisis that she's going through when things get kicked off.
Yes, no, absolutely. I think yeah, well, here's the interesting thing. It's such a, we're only inside our own minds, right? We only know what we think. We only see through our eyes. We only hear through our ears. So for me, it's very easy for me to think, oh, this is such a neurodivergent book, right? But ultimately, I do think that this is just a universal human thing. And that's what I've discovered. When I first wrote this, I thought, gosh, this is a big swing. It's going to be, I was almost thinking like, thankful I have a multi-book contract, because this one's going to be like the one they always say in Hollywood, actors always say like one for me and one for you. It's like the studio, you do your big thing and then you do your independent thing, and you kind of go back and forth. And for this one, I thought, okay, this is a big one for me because it is so strange and so existential, and I don't know if it's going to work. And then, I can get back in like the more like straightforward horror lane because I love them both. But what I have found is this really seems to be resonating across the board. And I think it's because while neurodivergent people may feel these things a little more, especially if they're kind of in that sort of categorizing mindset, this is a very human experience. Just, I mean, the ultimate human experience, right? Trying to categorize the world that we kind of can't categorize.
Yeah.
And I think that's something like that the best books or any media can do is sort of show you a unique experience, but then also point out like what people can connect through, with that, like what is universal in the unique and the individual.
Yes.
I mean, again, I also think one of the things that was really universal about this book is just this whole idea of, does anything really matter? I actually reference this to Jen a lot. There was an SNL skit with Jessica Chastain where basically they were going through current events. I'm just going to say between the years of 2016 and 2020, and certain
Yes.
things were happening. And it was a game show. Does anything really matter anymore? And there's a point where she just like takes a bottle of wine and just, like takes the cork, spits it out, and just starts drinking. And it's like, okay, will anything happen? Will there be any consequences if this happens? No,
Yes.
no consequences at all. And I feel like that a lot. Does anything really matter anymore? But for Vera, when this crazy low probability event, and my notes say WTF,
Yes.
happens, it's like she's just like, well, okay, what's the point of everything? And for somebody who is used to these controlled statistics, it feels very much like that.
Yes. I think that feeling, right, is kind of the genesis of the book. Of like, we all kind of know that. And what I've discovered, I have this thing, like when I wrote Bury Your Gaze, there's a lot of it about like AI and all this stuff. And when I wrote that book, I was really worried because I wrote it kind of before the everything really took off with that. And I thought, no one's gonna believe this. I might have to like change some things about it because it's like taking it a little too far. And then by the time it came out, everyone was like, wow, Chuck, you're just, what, did you write this yesterday? And I wrote it like 2 years before. So I have this fear that I'm predicting future events sometimes, kind of like the whole the Simpsons did it kind of thing. Like there's a Simpsons episode predicting every potential future. And so with this one, it is about that feeling. And we've all gone through it. We went through it with COVID, with, the Trump presidency, like all of this stuff where we just kind of sit there and think, does anything matter? Now that's like the news version. I think there's also a personal version of that we all go through too. But there's the broader news version where we see these headlines and we just think, what is the entire world chaos? Does anything actually make sense? I do think that is specific to this time, but I also, what I've realized is that it kind of always feels like that. It does to varying degrees, of course, but what I have kind of started to realize with this book is that, it is life, existence is just utterly chaotic. It just is always going to be. And there are things that exasperate that, certainly, but I think maybe that's why the book is resonating like it is as well. It is simultaneously like uh more personal than I expected, because I expected it to be completely existential and people like, what the heck? But at the same time, it is also more universal than I expected. So it's actually resonating very well in this way of these themes that I keep thinking, oh no, am I gonna predict the next dang 2 years? And I've started to kind of realize, no, this is just, it's like the book says, there's historical inertia there. And it just kind of like, we are in this state of chaos. And the real question is not about like, how can we even out the chaos? I think the real question is, okay, it's going to be chaos. Like, how can we find love in that? How can we, prove love through a place that just isn't going to make sense? Existence is a wild place.
Oh my goodness, that is such an important point, especially because I am currently and will be for probably my life raising a child with anxiety.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah,
Yes.
age 10, depression and anxiety, and and his brother too. He has a twin brother, but it manifests differently with both of them. And like they want me and my husband to tell them what's going to happen. They want us to promise that certain things are going to be okay. And there is no answer that I could give them to promise that, because I have no control over that.
Yes. Well,
Yeah.
hopefully that's what folks, I think ultimately what I would like Buckaroos to take away from this book is, we have so much media that is dedicated to saying that everything will work out. It's kind of like the Disney, the traditional thing of, you have this problem and then everything's going to be fine. And a lot will be fine, but ultimately there are certain things that are just going to be hectic. Life is going to have ups and downs. And so kind of the point that I wanted to make with this book is it's not about like convincing yourself that everything is going to make sense. I really think it's about accepting the fact that nothing really makes that much sense, and then finding love in that anyway. Like finding ways, developing tools, approaching the world from a point of view where you say, listen, I'm not begging the universe to make sense. I have found my own way to navigate it and my own values and my own proof of love that doesn't rely on, you know, order versus disorder. It's just me choosing love.
Yeah, that sort of speaks to what my therapist would call like the prism of like existentialism and nihilism, you know, like
Yes.
nothing meaning anything can be incredibly empowering because it means you get to make your own meaning, or it could be completely
Yeah.
terrifying and intimidating because you have to make your own meaning. So
Absolutely. It is all, I mean, like so many things, it is perspective, you know? And so there's different things that we can do, like developing, like actively working on gratitude, different things like that, like choosing love when we are faced with these choices. I think too, you know, I won't get too like religious or spiritual about, but I will say there are a lot of sort of like religions, of course, are a way to find order, right? Like people come, they see this chaotic world, nothing makes sense, and then they have religion because you know, it just kind of gives them a nice system. That's fine, you know. That is not necessarily for me, but like I absolutely understand it. But I also think for me, when I look at these things, a lot of them are punishment based, right? It's like if you don't do this, then you're gonna burn forever in eternal hellfire. And there's all kinds of different versions of that, depending on the religion. To me, making a choice in that environment is not actually making like a choice for good, right? If you only do good things because you believe you're going to get punished, is that really good? I think that once you remove the system from that and you say, listen, that if you take the point of view, there is no punishment, there is no meaning, there's nothing, and I still choose to do good. I think that's 10 times more powerful than saying, well, I'm in this system, so I better do good or I'm going to get in trouble. I
Yeah.
think that if you actually start to extrapolate, like accepting the chaos, there's so much power in doing good in a chaotic universe.
is that why you think perhaps that you are drawn to horror? Because as you were talking, I was thinking that like the opposite of love is fear, you know, and so that's
Yes.
kind of what you find on the flip side.
Yes, no, I think absolutely. I think it is another version of something that I've said many times, which is, you know, the best place to prove love is in the darkness. So the genre of horror is, you know, in any story, really, regardless of genre, a lot of the thing that you're tasked with as like a writer or a film director or anything, if you are telling a story, you're generally going to think, okay, here's the story I want to tell. What characters are the best way to tell that? Like, who's going to have the biggest journey? What are the situations that are going to like do that, like create that effect the most? And when you come to proving love, you're absolutely right. What's gonna allow you to shine the brightest? It's darkness. So I do think, you know, finding love in chaos is exactly the same thing. It's very easy to have gratitude on a sunny day. It's really hard to have gratitude on a terrible day. You know, it's I think you'll hear a lot of folks who have a problem with the practice of gratitude, and this is fine. It's, you know, it's a hard thing to do. They will use examples like, well, how am I supposed to be grateful if insert this terrible thing happening? You know, how am I supposed to be grateful if I just broke my arm, let's say? And I would actually say that is kind of where gratitude matters the most. When these terrible things happen, that's kind of where it has its power, because on a sunny day where everything goes perfectly right, saying I'm grateful, is that really, you know, that's important. I do it all the time. I would never knock it, but the power is when you can do that when things don't go your way.
I wanted to talk a little bit about Agent Lane and Vera's partnership because that was a really interesting, it was almost like a buddy cop situation. And
Yes.
you bring in Dark Encounters again, by the way, which I know Jen really likes because she's like a huge X-Files fan. But yeah, that was like a really interesting part of the book because, we've talked a lot about Vera and about what happens with her. It's supposed to be the best day of her life, and then, things stop going right, and then everything in the world stops going right. But Agent Lane has this interesting connection, finds Vera after the fact, and he wants her help in figuring out whether there's culpability in that particular situation. But they have this really interesting dynamic between the two of them, and they look at things very differently and they come at things very differently. How did their relationship grow while you were writing?
So those characters are basically representing in a lot of ways. I mean, they're more complex than this, but on a surface level, the like kernel of their function in the story is basically nihilism versus absurdism. It is what you brought up earlier. If nothing makes sense, am I going to not do anything, or am I going to do everything? So that's like the fundamental thing, which I think it plays into a lot of tropes because the setup of the buddy cop thing, sometimes they're kind of aligned, but a lot of the time they are opposites in some ways. X-Files, perfect example, believer and skeptic. Like there's a reason through storytelling that you can do that. I think that what is interesting is that when I was thinking about I was thinking about the X-Files a lot when I was writing Bury Your Gaze, because there's like a big thing with Dark Encounters and then a show that spins off from that. So I thought it was fun to weave that through this, because as I started thinking about buddy cop shows, I kind of started to realize ultimately how like problematic they are, that I love them too, but so much of it is just kind of government or police propaganda. There is like so many heroic moments in those shows where they like kick open a door and say like, we don't need a warrant, and as the audience we're supposed to be like, yeah, let's go. And when you really analyze those shows, it is shocking what they kind of teach us culturally about the police. So I kind of wanted to comment on that with this because I knew I was doing a bit of buddy cop thing, and I won't give away exactly how, but I do think that I kind of explore the darkness of that and how it's very easy to like fall in love with these characters and then not really realize, oh, well, they are actually kind of crooked cops ultimately. And I will also say, to the X-Files credit, I think it's actually kind of the only show, and maybe why so many love it so much, like kind of the only one of those shows that does the opposite. Every other show, the police or whatever, the task force, is kind of the ultimate authority, and them breaking the rules is for the greater good. And what's interesting is that in the X-Files, they flip it where the ultimate authority is bad. The FBI in the X-Files is bad. Mulder is, working kind of against the quote cops in that, even though he is one himself. And that's kind of the ultimate arc of the show, is saying like, actually the system is bad that they're working within. So I have to give it a lot of credit, because unlike all those other shows, the X-Files actually flips it around a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree. And the amount of, what was it? I think for a while, my husband and I would watch NCIS, and I'm like, every single person in this show is horrifically breaking the law and unethical.
Just incredibly corrupt show. It's
incredibly corrupt, from like sexually harassing literally everyone to just breaking laws.
Yes.
And after a while, I'm like, man, I just can't do this anymore. I'm like, I know that there's like entertainment in it. I'm like, but nah,
Well, they are very entertaining, and I think there is something also with human beings where it's almost like, okay, I'm gonna get real wild here. I think it almost goes back to like the Western as a genre where we want someone that kind of exists on both sides of like civilization and the outskirts, right? And they have to walk this line. And part of that is kind of like breaking the laws as they see fit. So we have these kind of police shows where there is like unquestionably, you can look through, there is a moral, a statement that they are making that is, there is this ultimate like police force good that can do anything. Like, no exaggeration, these shows will be something like, oh well, the drug dealer didn't really have drugs, so the main character planted drugs on them, and then there's this big talk about, is that okay because they're also a murderer, and it'll be like, well, ultimately we had to break the law a little to get it done. That's like the point of every episode of these dang shows.
Yeah.
And so it is this really interesting thing where I think humans love that. Even look at a show like House, let's say. It is exactly the same thing. Granted, we're talking about a different like industry or different thing, but it's like we resonate with these characters that basically say, hey, we have this system set up that will keep people from getting hurt. And we have a character that comes in and says, heck your system, I'm going to do this anyway. And you're going to arrest me. And then you're going to realize that I was right the whole time because the system, is like, I'm outside of it. It is just this really interesting thing that we love as human beings. It probably goes back to sitting around the fire as cave buckaroos. Like there's this thing that we always want our hero to both be a part of the system and then like work outside of it and break the rules.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is like, I feel like a really consistent thread, like even in like just American media, because you have like Westerns through your like John McClane of the 80s and 90s, who like
Oh yes.
is a police officer, but like he's got to go outside the system in order to really get his stuff done.
Everyone, and there's always going to be a line. And they're literally going to say it like, what? Well, I got to work outside the system. And they say, yeah, let's go.
I did absolutely adore this book. It as I've said with everything, this was another one sitting read. I sat down and I read it cover to cover. And I appreciate the threads that go through all of your books, be it Dark Encounters or be it, just references to things that happen in Camp Damascus. I think, for all of us who have sort of, been following since you started with Tor, whether people found you through Tor Nightfire or whether people knew you from before.
Yes.
It's really just super fun to kind of see this evolution. And this book, I mean, there's so many other characters I want to talk about, but I don't want to give anything away because it really was just such a fun journey to go on. You said you have a multi-book deal. Yeah, what's next for you?
Wow. Yes. So well, more connections to other books. I do I think what's nice is that I write a lot and I also write pretty far ahead. So like I am able to include connections to other books that kind of not only move like backwards in time to things I've already written, but they move forward. There's references in Camp Damascus to the Great Britannica hotel. So that book came out 2 years previous to this one. So like I can weave that web in both directions, which I think is really nice. I think it can be frustrating with media. Like as much as I love a shared universe, I think it's really fun and I think Buckers really enjoy it. You do start to notice, wait a minute, this always goes backwards and never forwards because they don't exist yet. Like there's not a lot of setups in this book that will pay off 5 books later. I have taken a lot of time to actually do that. There's stuff in there's some stuff in Bury Your Gaze that's referencing a book that will come out 2 dang years from now. There's all these these different things. There is a reference in this one, pretty strong reference to the next book that will come out next year called Fabulous Bodies. That is takes place in Palm Springs. It's this whole thing. So that's reference. And I will say, I think as far as that web goes, like if I was to get a little dartboard and take these strings and point them all to the other places, I think that Lucky Day references more other works in the Tingleverse than anything else. There's future things. It references every one of the horror books, even kind of works as like almost a stealth sequel to one of them. I won't give it away, but there's a bit of a reveal at the end that actually kind of fully explains the events of one of my earlier books that were left open. And it even kind of references the erotica Tingleverse. There's like it kind of connects all those things together. So I love doing that. And I think, what's next is continuing to do that. So it's already kind of set up. There's stuff in this that's kind of setting up the next one.
You've mentioned how far ahead you've written, and you were talking before about being pleased that this was your third, that you could prove yourself and take a risk on this one. Were they released in the order that you began them, or did you sort of like manipulate the release order in order to let you do that?
Oh, that's a great question. So they have, up until this point, been released in the order that I wrote, but the next one is actually a swap. So I have 2 next books written, and the order is changed. So the one that comes out next is actually the most recent, and then it's going to go backwards. And I wrote the one after that before. So it is just it's a whole mess of a thing. But what's kind of nice about that is the publishing industry is so well, it's not actually that slow when you think about it, but compared to what I'm used to, I write an erotica short and it comes out 24 hours later. So it's definitely slow compared to that. And it's very nice. If I'm gonna have to wait a couple years, it's pretty neat to be able to like plan that and manipulate that and think, what? I think the tone of the world, I have these 2 books and I'm going to choose this one. I want that one to be next. It's like kind of nice to be able to plan that order. And you kind of can make your entire, bookshelf a bit of a art piece. You can actually plan like where each segment will go. It's really nice.
Ooh, that's great.
Yeah, I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, thank you so much. I am so excited to see what's next, and it's always just so nice to have you here. Thank you so much.
Oh my
Thank
gosh,
you.
it's wonderful to be here. I would every time if I'm putting out a book a year, bring me back. I love coming.
Yay! Very excited.
I love chatting and seeing this beautiful library too. I can see it on your Zoom and it looks, gosh, I just want to sit there and read or do research on something, or I don't know, just wonderful.
Awesome. Well, very cool. Thank you so much. This was wonderful. Thank you. Check out Lucky Day. It was really good. I'm so happy to hear that it's resonating with people and that you got to do something for yourself and that it's almost like that's got to feel like some validation right there.
Yeah. Yes. Well, I should say all of them are for myself, but it's almost like
true.
it, but to your point, it is, while they are all to myself, I also kind of in my head have this thing of like, okay, I kind of know how buckaroos are going to react to it, right? So while they are all for me, some of them are, and I think, this is going to right down the middle, right? You're throwing a fastball. And then some of them you think, I'm going to try a really strange pitch here,
Nice.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, so once again, this was Jessica with Turn the Page podcast. My co-host was
Jen, goodbye. See you next time.
and Chuck Tingle. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.